Hello everyone, welcome to the Flight Sim deck. We're at Cyril E Airport on the Virgin Islands, and we're going to do an exciting flight over to Saba Airport TNCS with one of the world's shortest runways. And we're going to do so in the C208B. Always been a favorite plane of mine. I always fly the Coronado version. This is the G1000 version of the plane and comes with Microsoft Flight Simulator. Highly detailed C208B here with the exterior model and the way the systems operate too. I kind of like how the G1000 functions in this one too. So we're in the cabin, we're getting ready to go, and I want to show people, I think there's a misconception that you can't really walk around. Now, you can move around the cabin. This is with the showcase camera. As long as you slow the speeds and make them smooth, you can pretty much walk around. You just don't have like a step animation, a step where the camera shakes as you take steps. But if the camera is taken care of right, I also suggest, aside from your flight controls, plug in a cheap gamepad and use that. And the control sticks, you can walk all the way around the plane. I mean, you can really do a full walk around if you wanted to. You can look at all the parts of the plane, get low. I don't know how this will function in VR, hopefully the same way, but it's kind of always weird when you're using a controller with VR and that type of movement. But yeah, if you want to, climb under the wing, it's the nose gear here. If you want to get close and inspect that, you can do so with the triggers. Have it set up to lower and raise you. But you really can get out of the plane and walk around as long as you're parked. Like if you're doing, let's say a bush flying mission and you park near a riverbed, you can get out of the plane. Once the doors open, it'll look a little better. But, I mean, look at the prop here. You can actually inspect the prop. It's detailed enough to where, if they wanted to model little marks and nicks, and they have in some of these things. It's just a lot of detail here. I mean, look how everything's held together. Like, they've added all of that. So you can do a walk around. So I think there's a little bit of a misconception that you can't walk, but you really can walk. Just set the camera up. So we're in the cockpit of the C208B. And first thing we want to do is make sure the mixture is all the way at cutoff and our prop lever is all the way up. And then we can turn our battery on, our standby, our alternator. Put the beacon light on, and then we can turn on the no smoke and the seatbelt signs. Or do them after you do the start. Avionics 1 on. It should show up on the captain side, but it shows up here. We're going to need this to manage the oil and RPMs. So we want to give the aircraft some fuel. The switch is here. Open up the fuel tanks. And we'll turn on our fuel boost. Set the starter to start, and then we can turn the ignition on. Now we're looking for NG of 12% and that it's stable, and then we can move the condition lever to low idle, about 50-60%. We'll leave it there until we take off. And then you should see NG of 52%, and then your ITT no hotter than 1090 degrees Celsius. Okay, so we can turn the ignition to normal, the fuel boost to normal, and then our starter to off. And then Avionics 2 can come on at this point. And then just a few things with the G1000. You can turn the brightness up and down right here, and then you have some other panel lighting right there. So that's where those are hidden. Sometimes you can't see them when they're behind the yoke. But to look at the G1000, a few things you'll need to do just to go over it. Basically, you'll probably be, if you're using ATC, you'll be given a squawk code of some sort. So you want to get in here, and to do that, you can come over to XPDR, and then you click code. And then you can type in your code. We're going VFR today, and we'll just put 1200. And then it's good to go. You can hit back. You can ident if needed to. And then this is where you can set it to standby on or alt. Now the next thing we'll need to do is program the proper altimeter, and that's going to be done through ATIS. So we'll call up ATIS and see what we're doing today. So you just shift over your frequency to the left for it to activate. And then you have a volume knob here. which is really nice.
Condition. Few clouds at 1,000 feet temperature. 15 dew point. 1 tree altimeter 29.902. Visual runway 28 in use.
So today it's 29.902, which we already have in there. That's just kind of the default weather system, I guess. I should have live on, but unless it's really 29.902, but I don't think so. It's probably something else. But that's what it is in the sim, not in the real world at the moment. So we have that in there. The top knob here is going to be your course heading. This bottom one right below the CRS and borrow is going to change that. But we're leaving it at 29.902, but that's where you change that. So having that in your squawk code, you should be really set to go unless you're doing your own flight plan. But that gets a little technical. We're just doing a straight trip over to the airport. There's no airways to follow or anything, so just straight over today. Alright, so we're going to start taxiing. We're taking off from runway 28, and this will be my first time actually going into Saba. I've never done it before. The airport is actually, they say it's considered closed, and you have to have special permission to land there. And we're going to do the landing on the 30 side, which is done. It's just rarely done. There is some video footage out there you can find of it being done, mainly due to crosswinds, but they normally land on the other side. Short runway, only 1,320 feet by 80. We'll talk about that a little more as we get over to that airport. Still seeing some stutters. I'm running this at the high-end settings, and I've purchased a new CPU, which should be here this week. So with that, you know, it's a different socket. Had to get a different motherboard, new RAM. So we put our, if you just noticed we were talking, but we put the condition lever all the way to high for this takeoff. Lights are all on, and we're set to go. So we're just going to throttle up. Careful not to exceed our RPMs. You can do that really easily. So just ease into it. Be rotating at about 70 knots. 60. 70, and we'll start rotating. Plenty of runway left, too. So we're finally in the Caribbean area. A lot of people were requesting the Caribbean. These are probably locations they would have rather seen something else, but I've checked out this airport already. It looked pretty beautiful. And this is an example of a default airport. This is not a handcrafted airport. So, you know, some look better than others, but this is one of the good ones. Now, the airport we're going to on Saba is a fixed-up airport. It's one of the few. Probably going to be a landing challenge, if it isn't already. I haven't seen it as a landing challenge, but it might be. Yeah, we're getting closer to the release. It's coming up next week. I will be live streaming on the day of the release. You can take requests and look at some of your areas. Probably be faster to do it with the drone camera. So right now we're pitching for 80. We're going to turn and fly as close to the island as we can while we gain some altitude. It'd be really awful to have an engine failure out here, especially with this being a fixed gear aircraft. They don't tend to land on water so well. But yeah, I decided to keep the 1080 Ti for now, right in the middle of the new generation too. You got the 3000 cards coming out. So I'm going to wait to see what those are about. But the 1080 Ti is still pretty good. It's ranked 9th for overall speed at the moment, but I really think it's just the CPU bottleneck at the moment. So it'll be interesting. I'll have this on a fresh solid state drive install, and it should run pretty smooth, you know. So I've gotten away with it this long. The 4790K 1080 Ti is not so finicky in other programs and games, but this is where it stops, I guess, is with this sim. But it's time. It's a 6-year-old CPU. Time to modernize my setup for sure. Now it'll last you years. That's why I recommend getting the best stuff you can get. I would have got the 10900K CPU, but they're sold out everywhere. Can't imagine why. Probably everybody building flight sim rigs right now. But That one is overkill, but sometimes it's good to have overkill because, you know, that CPU will be good for a long time. So we're reaching 9,000, which is going to be our cruise today, and we're going to test out this autopilot. We're using the heading mode today. Not yet, we're still hand flying it, but we will be using heading. Only because it's just a direct GPS route, and I don't want to use the nav mode for that. So we're just going to stay on a certain heading. Okay, so we're still holding along at 150 knots, 9,000 feet. Starting to approach the island. Starting to come within range. So we're going to get ready for our descent, which we'll go down to 4,000 feet. And we'll use the vertical speed mode for that, probably 1,100 descent rate. And then when you do that, you have to get on to the throttle. You have to manage that. There's no auto throttle in this aircraft. So you want to make sure you don't start going too fast. You can start overspeeding. And with that, that'll take us down. Still on the heading mode. Vertical speed. And heading down to 4,000 feet now. You can start to see the island coming into sight here. I'm a little bit nervous about this one. Never been there before. Curious how it's modeled. It's got to be accurate if it's one of the handcrafted airports. Yeah, just this one island kind of isolated out here. So here we are. It is Stutter City over at this island, and I can't really imagine why. It's just a small island and a bunch of water. So, you know, plus again, this is beta. I'm sure it'll be further optimized. I remember when X-Plane 11 was first released, it was not as smooth as it is now. That is from refinements over time. Yeah, very, very stuttery. I just wanted to fly over the runway first and look at it. A lot of textures and part of the mountain is still forming, loading in. Yeah, not what I would expect performance-wise in this area. It's not like it's a big city or anything. But again, this is stuff the new rig should help smooth out. Probably not entirely. I've seen some pretty heavy PCs out there, still getting some stutters. But this is just, it's too much. And of course OBS and the video editing and encoding doesn't help. And then I've also heard mixed things that YouTube can also reduce the quality in your video a little bit. Like if the file size is too much, they can do that, but I'm not sure about that. But definitely OBS and the encoding probably steal a few frames. So you're never truly seeing the original, but there are definitely stutters coming from this. But I wouldn't worry about it. I wouldn't worry about it too much. They're still working on this. This is not a final build. And even if it comes out this way, it's still worth using. I wouldn't let that stop me from using it. But I know these stutters are going to get a little better with my PC update. So again, this runway is 1,300 feet, and I think you only have about 1,000 feet of landing distance, so you really can't mess up, and you really need to come in slow. Because if you come in too high and you start compensating, you will end up too fast and probably end up off the cliff. So we're going to try to come in at like 65 knots. It's almost so small we can't even see the airport now. It's on the right side of the island, if you can't see it. I'm wearing one of those Garmin health watches right now. I bet the heartbeat is up there right now because this is nervous. This is like when you're playing video games as a younger person and you're playing that final boss, and you start getting that kind of like that feeling, that slight adrenaline. Not adrenaline like doing something physical, but it's some adrenaline when you reach this point. That's kind of what it feels like right now on this approach. You really get one shot at this because a go around, if you were to touch down and have to go around, that's even risky. You may not get out of that. No pappy lights to guide you. No instruments to guide you. This is all visual. So we're really going to have to plant it. This is not a time for a greaser landing. You can't grease every landing. Ones like this, you've got to plant it fast, firm, and start stopping the plane. Well, keeping it straight. I think I'm getting used to the rudders in this now. So the taxiway is behind us. We're going to have to loop around. And this caravan doesn't like to turn around easy. So we'll have to get into the grass. We'll take care of the weeds for him. Gotta start pulling some of these weeds. Yeah, we'll go right over that. Could have gone around it, but hey, who cares? It's polygons, so I don't care. Yeah, we don't want to hit the light. Probably blow a tire. Back on the runway. Well, what a neat little airport we have stopped at here. Look, you get to turn into this, like, almost like a driveway. Nice day out here, too. Clear day. Unfortunately, with no replay mode, I can't show the landing. I don't even get to see it myself, so that's not so fun. So hopefully we get the replay functionality soon, because it's important. A lot of people got to see their landings, got to debrief, because sometimes it can feel one way in the cockpit. You go and watch it and it went a completely different way than you thought. It's always good to have that. Turn the avionics off and pull the condition lever. The engine will start coming off. Can also close the fuel tanks. Get our lights off. Should have actually got these off way before we turned in here, but I wasn't thinking about it. Well, hopefully you enjoyed this flight to Saba. It was a fun, exhilarating flight to do. So lots more surprises in store. You guys take care. See you next time.